Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Indie Game Movement, the podcast that talks about the marketing and business of indie games. I'm Andrew Pappas. I'm going to be your host today, and this is episode 139, where we're going to be talking about marketing your game after launch. All right, you finally made it. You worked long and hard, and your game is hitting the market at last, and you're getting ready for all of that public reception. But just because your game is out and the end of the journey is in sight doesn't mean you should stop your marketing efforts. Thankfully, our guest today has been in this scenario multiple times with their own titles and in addition to titles they've published, providing valuable insight not only why you should continue to market your released games, but also ways to maintain that marketing momentum. So that's what we're going to be talking about right here today on Indie Game Movement. Hey everybody, and we're back, and today I have Tanya X Short from Kitfox Game. And Tanya's been on the show before, but let me get right into it. Tanya, how are you doing?
Hey Andrew, it's all right. I'm tired from a game launch, but just recovering and trying to be sustainable.
Awesome. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I can only imagine what it's like just getting out of a launch and then getting right into the midst of a show here. So we really appreciate you being on the show and sharing what you have to share with us.
I appreciate you having us. I feel like, I just have one perspective, but I'm happy to share it to people who want to hear it.
Yeah, well, it's definitely a perspective we appreciate here, too, because I believe this is the second time now that you're being a guest on the show, which is really exciting. But we have some good stuff to talk about, don't we, today?
Yeah, thanks so much. Looking forward to it.
Yeah,
Let's do it.
All right, awesome. But real quick, in case people haven't checked out your last episode, which was a while ago, is episode 107, where you talked about using game design and appeal with marketing. Just give a quick update about, or just quick synopsis about Kitfox and what your role is with the company.
Sure, yeah. So I'm Tanya X Short. I'm the captain of Kitfox Games. We're a 8 to 9 person studio. We're hiring one right now. That's why I'm a little bit vague. But we develop games like Boyfriend Dungeon and Moon Hunters, and we just put out Lucifer Within Us last month, so that'll probably be talked about a lot in this episode. But we also publish games. So probably our most famous game we're publishing is Dwarf Fortress. We're bringing a graphical version of it to Steam, but we're also publishing a museum simulator called Mondo Museum, and a dog photography game called Paparazzi, and we do a lot of stuff. And I am, as the captain, I am the person in charge of the marketing strategy as well as basically everything miscellaneous. So yeah, it's fun times.
Yeah, you wear many hats outside.
Many, all on top of each other. Yes.
Awesome. All right. Well, before this, thank you so much for sharing that so people have a clear idea of what you do and what Kitfox does. But before we get into it, we decided to switch it up in terms of some returning guests where we are still going to put you through the Q-Box round. It's a little different. But if anybody else wants to check out her original Q-Box round, again, like I said, that's episode 107. Some pretty interesting questions there. But are you ready for our mini Q-Box round for you today?
Okay.
All right. What is your favorite genre of book?
I love short fiction, science fiction anthologies. I really, really loved Exhalation by Ted Chiang. I think is an amazing collection, and I just get so invigorated, like as a creator and as a reader, and just as a person when I read a really good science fiction short story.
Nice.
Can't get enough. Favorite
vegetable?
I'm going to have to go with potato. I know it's a little bit boring, but honestly, I can't get away from it. You can do so much. It's so versatile. You can combine it with everything. You can make it all sorts of different textures. Yeah. It's very difficult for me to lie and say it's not potato.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. I'm like, there's so much potential.
Yeah.
All right, and last but not least, what is your proudest Twitter moment?
I could have a lot of answers to this because I do spend a lot of my time on Twitter, but the one that comes out of my heart right now is seeing that just the other day, my protege, my community manager who just left Twitter, just left Kitfox, has surpassed me on Twitter, and I'm so proud of her. Victoria Tran is a marketing and community management genius, and now she's the communications director over at Inner Sloth on Among Us, and I'm going to miss her at Kitfox so much, but I think seeing that her follower count grew so quickly and so deservedly, I'm just incredibly proud of everything that she's accomplishing, and I always will be.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome too. To say because I think it's well been known throughout the community in terms of the influence that you've had and Kitfox has had on Victoria, and I think that it's just really exciting to see that moment happen. So that's cool. I'm glad that worked out, and you can really see her doing these things, and I think it says a lot about you to really reflect on a moment like that too. So that's a really good one. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, well, that was our mini Q-Box round, but we're going to get right into the discussion here today, folks, and that is specifically about marketing your game after launch, which couldn't be any more appropriate timing-wise for you because you just launched a game, and obviously there's a bunch of others that you've launched in the past, so that's why we thought you would be a perfect guest for this. So thank you again, Tanya.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, we've launched 5 or 6 games at this point. We're up there.
Awesome. So why don't we just kick this off then with one in particular that I was curious about, because now that you've launched a bunch and everything else, and I figured you'd be a good person to start this conversation with, which is there's a lot of work that's up to and during the game's initial launch, right? And when that period is finally over, what are some mistakes that you see indie devs make after that period of time, regardless if they have a publisher or not?
I think the biggest and most natural mistake that I see, and something I've been guilty of also, is when a game launches and it disappoints you, it's very tempting to just abandon it and just walk away and never talk about it again. Part of it is that you're embarrassed, and part of it is that you're disappointed, and part of it might just be that you resent it. Like you spent years making this thing, and you put it out in the world, and it felt like nobody wanted it, and so it's just tempting, at least to some personality types, including mine, to say, "Well, you had your chance. Goodbye. I'm going to go focus on something else that loves me more back." You feel like you poured so much into this and you get nothing out of it. But that's a huge mistake, because even if your game hasn't found its audience yet, and maybe it never does, maybe, it'll never quite perform the way that you hoped it would. There's still millions of people out there who haven't heard of it. And there are those handful of people who are playing it who deserve your attention and your time. We often think of marketing as only about recruiting new customers, but it's also, part of the buyer's journey, as it were, is this post-purchase experience, and like caring for them and helping them become loyal to your brand and to you, and have a good positive memory of that game. And so I think the biggest temptation I would advise fighting against is to abandon games as soon as they disappoint you. Try to open your heart to it a little bit more. And of course, you can't afford to spend years and years and years,
right,
trying to pump up a game that totally flopped. But that doesn't mean you have to abandon it either. You need to find a middle path to try and give it a few more chances and just keep it in your rotation of things that you can promote when there's opportunities that match it.
Yeah. One thing I want to underscore to that too, because I think is great, because it's like once you abandon it, then it's good to look at it as an asset. But the thing that I really want to underscore too is how you called out on like the buyer's journey and everything, because that's actually something that I work with a lot of people with too, or mention in that same mindset, the buyer's journey. But I love how you're even carrying that over in this instance where the game is launched, it's over, don't abandon it. Like, what is that like for the user's perspective, whether they're already engage with the product or they haven't found it before. So, and I don't want to talk more about that right now because I know we'll get into it a little bit more, but I just wanted to call out
we
to
will.
that. I thought that was awesome that you're really thinking above and beyond in terms of what is that user journey like. So we're going to shift things up a little bit because what I really want to do, because I'm sure it's probably top of mind right after the initial launch to an extent, following the press and how the press are covering, because that's definitely a big part of a lot of this among many other moving parts. So one thing I'm wondering is, how do you handle, all the press scores and everything else coming in at and around the game's launch? And what role does that play in your approach to marketing as a whole?
I mean, honestly, I probably should pay more attention to it. Our priorities have primarily been to help potential customers hear about the game in as many different ways as possible. And so press is just one of those. And press scores is even then a subcategory of that, right? So there's so many different ways that somebody can hear about the game at launch, whether it's social media or YouTube or Twitch or, theoretically magazines or things like that. But as far as the traditional press who's, they create a review score and they put it on their website. Usually I try to have a friend who has press experience play the game and give me their honest feedback. And at bigger companies, they pay thousands of dollars for this kind of service, and it's called mock reviews. And it's worth it because you should know, not just in terms of what your score will be, but what are the pain points from a press perspective. And they are a little bit different from the customer. There's this funny thing where Lucifer Within Us is a great example of a game where something that mildly concerned the press was a huge issue for Steam users. And that's the issue of the game's length. Press, they have certain things, they have a certain way that they're playing the games. They have certain tastes, and that's why they have their jobs. They have certain talents. They have certain interests. And Steam users, for example, have certain interests, and Switch users have certain interests, and Apple iPhone users have certain interests. Yep. And so, I think it's something to keep in mind that number will follow you around. And so for us, obviously, we're interested in that number being higher, especially apparently Nintendo cares a lot more about that number than a lot of other storefronts, just FYI. So I would say it's a minor role in our overall approach, but it is a sub note. If we know, for example, if we were to have an insensitive portrayal of, let's say, a trans character, that would be a huge problem with press and a major problem for our audience as Kitfox, and our identity and things like that. But the way that you prioritize what's going to affect your press score has to be a holistic approach to me. You can't just say, press, our press score is low because of this one small thing, let's say the title screen gives you a bad first impression or something like that. Right. And so all of the press are complaining about the title screen. It's sure, if it's easy to fix, great. But honestly, the press doesn't like some genres. They might not even play some genres. If your game is a builder sandbox survival, and that niche is extremely full right now, very overcrowded, press might not even play it. You might not even get enough scores to get on Metacritic. And so to me, I would not obsess about that. I would not worry about it too much. I would not spend time making that a major part of my marketing approach. And so I guess the boring answer is it depends on the game. Yep. The in-depth answer is the cost is balanced alongside all of the others.
Okay. No, that's perfect, because there's another question I had too, which you answered perfectly right there, which was, what's your stance on the relationship between those influencers and a healthy game lifespan? And clearly, like you said, it really depends on the game and your stance and how you as an entity, as a company too, want to be represented in, especially with the particular title as well. I mean, there's so many other factors in play, but I think a cool thing that you outline clearly here